first.
Hey, Distro, getting the first as always. We'll be starting in just a minute. You're studying. Well, you're about to study some video games because I'm excited about this one. Oh, you're out of here. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome in. We have a really special stream for you today. Let me make sure I'm in frame. I might have to jiggle in here. So we have here Alchemist Joker. Man, this setup. I don't think people appreciate like how tight it actually is in here.
I need you to understand. Since we're talking about this, the first thing we're gonna do, and I think I said this when I first got here, I was proud of my little setup until I like walked in here and saw the artistry that is going on here. Yes, okay, it is a little snug here, but it's not like we haven't been, shoulder to shoulder at several different booths and at several different events. So it's not like this is a first for us. But yeah, this is a really nice setup. It is this part is kind of tight, but again, we just work on foreground, background, and we'll be good.
Yeah, we'll be good. We'll be good. So, of course, as you guys just heard, I'm joined by the amazing Alchemist Joker. Alchemist, I think you're most known for your involvement in the fighting game community.
I am known a bit for that, but I am
you kind of expanded a lot since.
I have. I was a big fan of the FGC, and then, funnily enough, a lot of people know me from Destiny.
From Destiny.
I played Destiny for a very long time on stream. And then as time went on, I kind of started playing other games that I really enjoyed. I started playing other games that had those same types of intricacies that you can find in fighting games, because the same kind of things of finding different combinations and different ways to kind of exploit and use those abilities. Other games have those same types of things as well. And I started to realize that if I took that same analytical approach that I took to learning the character and applied it to, let's say, the mod system in Destiny 2, or in a equipment system in like a different like extraction shooter or things like that, then I could still enjoy those games at the same level. And so now I pretty much play pretty much everything now.
Yeah. So Alchemist is going to help us out today with sort of the new, not new to video games at all, but new to sort of the ARPG genre perspective.
Yes.
On Path of Exile 2.
Yes.
And then, of course, I am new to Path of Exile in that I've played about 2,000 hours. I'm 30,000 hours in Diablo 3. I'm 4,000 in Diablo 4. I'm 1,000 in Last Epoch. So I'm a ARPG specialist for everybody who already knows me here on the stream.
I like how you tried to. I'm really proud of the fact that you were able to say you were new to this with a straight face.
Okay, like you need to understand something here, Alchemist.
Okay.
This is maybe the first thing I need to tell you about. Okay, is that the Path of Exile community, the game is extraordinarily dense.
I've noticed that.
The what you experienced today was the tip of an iceberg that goes down to the center of the earth. Okay. And so I was actually just talking to another one of the MAXROLL content creators today, 10K.
Okay.
And he was like, I've played Path of Exile 1 for 10,000 hours, and I often feel like I'm still new to the game. Okay. So just to give you that sort of perspective, DM in the chat. Hey, DM, how you doing, bud? So what I think we have for you today is maybe a perspective of somebody who is brand new to PoE2, which one of the design goals is really to bring in brand new players, and someone who's new to PoE. Okay, yeah.
If we put the air quotes on any harder, I think that like our speech will come out in italics. if we air quote that any harder, we will start speaking in italics.
On top of all of that, we're going to talk about some of the other games that we've seen at PAX West. We have a whole list of them, including one that Gamer Wife who really liked. Let me show you guys this. This is right here. Focus camera. It's Doronko Wonko. Okay, it's about a dog that destroys everything in the house. So we're
most dogs.
so we're gonna do that. We have a couple of also special cool things to open on stream that we got at the convention center, including some PoE2 merch to show off.
Like Christmas for content creators to you?
I mean, for me personally, yes.
Okay, because this is the first year that I've gone primarily as a content creator. Like I did game demos, I did meetings, I did all of those things. This is the first year that it felt like I was being a capital C content creator. It's Christmas. I see the stuff that you have to open up, and I know I'm at least walking out of PAX with 4 new games to play, a couple of other kind of merchy things that I'm really looking forward to kind of playing around with, in addition to games that I know I'm going to be picking up. Like it feels very Christmassy, and I think the thing that I'm most looking forward to is just like with Christmas gifts, you get to unwrap that first gift, and I think unwrapping PoE2 as our first gift is going to be a lot of fun.
I couldn't agree more, but also so what a lot of people don't know is not only does PAX happen on this weekend, but also Seattle Indies.
Seattle Indies IRL does happen this weekend, and I also have a very, very kind of personal connection with Seattle Indies because I was actually in attendance for 6 IRL, so I got to see they have 32 games from developers in the Pacific Northwest, and I got to see all 32 of them. I think I got at least 10 minutes with each of those games.
I'm actually really excited to hear about the spooky game you told me about. We'll get there.
Okay.
But I want to hear more about it because that sounds really interesting. So okay, let's get started with some PoE2.
Okay, let's start. Let's start with the.
And actually, I want to start with your perspective.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna get down and dirty.
Okay.
We're gonna get in the weeds.
Okay.
But I really think the most important thing about this game is if it successfully appeals to somebody who has never played Path of Exile, who maybe the last Diablo game they played was Diablo 2, a long time ago. So, Alchemist, tell me, gush on me. Like, what are your first impressions of the game?
So, okay. At its outset,
and
the thing that's most important for a game, and I'm going to try to focus in on this, but I'm also going to start projecting here in a moment.
Yeah.
When we start talking about this game, I'm going to get more excited. One of the things that I found most interesting about PoE is that the initial hook for a game has to be good, right? So character creation and character selection is usually one of the things that is the most underrated kind of part of the game. You mentioned my FGC background, and one of the best character select screens of all time was from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. You had this giant, and I'm gonna actually kind of take you back to how it was when you started the game, because when you first launched Marvel vs. Capcom 2, if it was a brand new board, all of the characters weren't unlocked.
That's right.
In the arcade, they were unlocked by time. So as time went on, new characters would unlock, and eventually you'd have all 64 of them. Over time, we've seen character creation, like we've seen the initial character creation in Skyrim, which is famous. You can see character creation in games like PUBG. But the character selection in PoE was one of those things that was the first moment that it really caught me off guard, because you see all of the characters lined up, and I don't know if it's a spoiler to tell the state that they are in.
I think if you're on this stream, you might have watched a couple of pieces of content of PoE.
Okay, so you start off with all of them are basically at line of the gallows, and I'm going through each character, kind of going like, okay, well, this is a monk, this is a berserker, okay, the ranger looks kind of cool. I think I'm gonna want to try out the ranger.
So hang on. So all the characters are standing on sort of like a platform, right?
Yes.
They're at the gallows. They have a noose around their neck.
Yes, they're at the hangman.
And there's this executioner behind them in the background. Okay, what happens next?
So I selected a ranger, and the moment that I press the button to confirm my character, the floor drops out, and all of the characters drop. And my ranger's rope snaps, and she hits the ground, looks around a little bit, rolls out of the back, and then jumps off into the river. It was in that immediate moment that I was like, okay, so I know what we're here for. I know exactly, I now know what kind of game we're into. That already draws you in, because it's one of those things of like, you immediately feel a connection to that character because you literally saved their life by selecting them.
So all the classes that you don't select get hung instantly.
Yes. So it basically becomes you know that this is the right choice because it is now the only choice.
I think I have to make a comparison because in Diablo, right?
Right.
Diablo being the main competitor to this game.
Right.
There's a campfire, right? And all the characters are standing around the campfire. You pick your class, and then they kind of just stand up, and the camera zooms in on them, and you do your like appearance stuff, and then you start the game.
Right.
Whereas this is, okay, all the other classes are dead, hung at the noose.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different vibe than what I got in Diablo. Okay. What happens next?
So then once that's done, you do a little bit of the initial kind of moving around. You find a bow, because again, I'm playing the ranger, and then it starts teaching you kind of the mechanics of the game. Now, this is my favorite part of games, of any game, like progression systems. And getting to see how the progression system for that game builds was really wild. Because there are things that you start to think of naturally when you're playing a game, because you feel the controls and you feel the things that you want to change. Maybe it's movement speed, right? Maybe it's attack speed, maybe it's how much damage you take. And one of the first things that I started choosing was evasion. Because I am a firm believer that if you can't hit me, you can't hurt me.
Right.
And like when I played D&D, I played dexterity-based characters because I'm a dex nerd. If you can't hit me, I'm fine. And as the game is teaching me these different systems, the skill system alone was enough that I could feel the hooks of that game starting to sink in. Because you get the skill gem, you slot it in, you choose the skill. And I saw that there were additional nodes down that skill. And immediately started going, so I wonder how I can customize, because the first ability you get is the lightning arrow, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought in my head was, okay, so I know that this arcs between characters. I would be willing to bet that I'm going to have additional bounces,
so
maybe a bigger AoE.
This is actually fascinating to me. Okay, you've never played PoE 1?
No.
Okay, so PoE 1, if you didn't know, famously, people are very intimidated by its skill tree.
Okay.
So Did you have that feeling when you were
No.
leveling up and picking skills?
No,
And...
I actually felt excited.
Wow, that's actually, I'm impressed because like the whole, so in PoE 1, you start your character, you run up this beach, you get to town,
Right.
and you're immediately greeted with a whole bunch of skills that you have to grab from like a weird vendor
Right.
and hover over and learn.
Okay.
And you don't know which ones are good or not.
Of course.
And then the skill tree is very intimidating. A lot of folks say you kind of have to have like a PhD in the game to like play it
Okay.
correctly. So the fact that you felt as a completely brand new player, you felt not intimidated by Path of Exile.
No.
That's kind of saying something to me.
So you have to remember, and we kind of talked about it this at the beginning, but like the thing that I like most in games is build crafting, right?
Yeah.
I do build crafting, and build crafting exists in every game, be it COD, be it Destiny, be it fighting games where you're compiling a team. Like build crafting exists, right? So to see a game that gives that large of a canvas and goes, okay, here's your canvas. We're gonna give you a couple of pieces of paint to start off with.
Yeah.
Go play. I can see how it could be intimidating, right? Because it is a huge skill tree. Like the actual skill tree where you're increasing things like your attack speed, your movement speed, your evasion is a huge skill tree.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of how it flows, it becomes very easy to know where things should go and where you're going to use things. The only regret that I had about that skill tree is that I knew in the time I had with the game at the booth, I was not going to be able to fully play in that skill tree. I wasn't going to get caught in that web the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that is that if their goal was to bring a new player in, as a new player, I saw that and I was immediately drawn in.
Okay, so I want to get into skills here in a minute.
Okay.
And I actually have some screenshots here to talk about like different how you unlock the skills
Yes.
with the like uncut skill gems and stuff like that. And I actually have some details here that I haven't seen in any interviews because I asked some extra questions of the devs today.
Okay.
So let me jump back to what you were saying about evasion.
Okay.
So in PoE, one of the things that you really want to have is layers of defenses.
Yes.
And this is actually a pretty hard concept to understand in PoE 1. So in PoE 1, effectively, you want to stack as much armor and evasion as you can pretty early on with most character classes.
Right.
And then you need to max out your resistances to 75%.
Okay.
Then you want to get spell suppression, and then you want to get block, and you want to get deflection as well, right? So in PoE 2, and the thing is that all of those stats, they're kind of hidden on your character sheet amongst a bunch of other stats.
Okay.
And in PoE 1, especially to a new player, it's really hard to know that the resistances is probably the most valuable thing, and therefore when you get gear off the ground, finding a piece of gear with plus 15 all res is actually pretty valuable, right? That's actually a very difficult concept for new players to understand. Whereas in this game, if you open the character sheet in PoE 2, the very top of the character sheet, not the inventory screen, but the character sheet, is your 4 sources of defenses. It says armor evasion, spell suppression, or I guess there's 5. Armor evasion, spell suppression, deflection, block, right?
Okay.
And it has those in these big icons that are like, these are important, right? Like, I know that seems like kind of basic to someone who's like, a billion hours into PoE 1, but it's kind of this hidden mechanic, I think, to most new players.
Well, it definitely, if in PoE 1 it was kind of a hidden mechanic, they definitely took that lesson to heart in PoE 2, because I remember noticing those stats up there and immediately kind of went, okay, what are each of these things? Which brings me actually to the next thing about PoE PoE 2 that I really, really enjoyed, which is their UI in this game is really nice.
Yeah.
And it's important to have a good UI in a game that's an RPG that you're going to spend a lot of time in that UI, because if a UI is as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 famously learned, if your UI is bad, people will immediately disengage with it, and it will suck.
Yeah.
So the UI in this game was really, I thought it was really well done. It was really well thought out. I do want to bring up that there's another source of defense in this game. You listed off all of the defenses that are in the game itself, but any game like this has an additional kind of type of defense, and that's your movement.
Yeah.
So the movement of the players, I think, is equally as important as a defense, because you can have all the resistances in the world. If you face tank every attack in the game, you're gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't get hit, you don't take damage.
Yes.
Yeah. That actually is a big feature of this game. Is I think the dodge roll, and the dodge roll has no cooldown, so you can dodge roll all you want. You can dodge roll all day. In fact, I was watching other people like in the booth just like mashing spacebar and just trying to get away. Yeah, and yeah, I agree. We got 10K, one of the PoE 1 MAXROLL content creators in the chat here as well, saying, I think don't get hit is going to be a huge feature of PoE 2 in comparison to PoE 1. I totally agree with that. One thing I did notice about this demo, because they had a demo last year as well, is last year the demo at PAX West was really all that mattered. Really, like, don't get hit was all that mattered, and you had a little bit of extra defenses to make sure you didn't get one shot.
Right.
And that was it. This year, I felt that not getting hit or not getting hit as much was important.
Okay.
But it wasn't like you're gonna die if you get hit the way that you were dying last year. They definitely toned down the difficulty by a lot, I think.
So, as a person who was new to the game, that's interesting to me, because when I did get hit, I immediately felt it. And so, if imagining now that I know that it was worse before.
You died.
Okay, so so one of the other games that I spent a lot of time playing recently was Elden Ring, and one of the things in Elden Ring that kind of is always a bit of a point of frustration is you can perfect your build all you want. You can get it exactly the way you need it to be. You can have it perfectly fine-tuned. And then there are some enemies that, just because of the area you're in, there's damage scaling with it, just hit hard. And the one thing that Elden Ring kind of doesn't have is, like, there is no end game in Elden Ring. You kind of, depending on how you play and the type of player you are, the end game of Elden Ring, the end game feeling of Elden Ring is the minute you walk out of the gates onto the Great Plateau. So I kind of want to ask you, as a experienced PoE player, how does this game, from the demo that you've played and a little bit you've seen, what does this kind of make you think the end game of PoE 2 is going to feel like?
Man, I don't dare call myself an experienced PoE player.
More experienced than
okay,
you.
yeah, I guess I'll give you my take on end game.
Okay.
So first of all, I did do an interview with Octavian.
Okay.
And Octavian basically said they don't know what the end game is going to look like yet. Even the devs don't know what the end game is going to look like yet.
Interesting. Okay.
And because they haven't really finished developing it yet.
Okay.
And I do think with early access coming November 15th, that actually that's a pretty big risk for them. So, like, this game is omega hyped. It is insanely hyped. The lines at PAX West all weekend were capped, except for like today, and today was the least busy day. Like, even Sunday, which was a relatively light day, I want to say, the lines were like capped or almost capped the entire time. It was pretty wild. So yeah, to say that there's hype about PoE 2 would be putting it mildly, right?
Of course.
So I think the fact that the game is like super feature and content incomplete is this big risk, because people get their expectations into a certain mode, right, where they've played 10,000 hours of PoE1, and then they go, oh well, I really like essence crafting and I really like delirium, and then they might go into the early access and then find out that, like, I don't know, the level cap is like 50 and there is no end game and there's no mapping or any of that kind of stuff, just because the content isn't there. Like, for example, the demos that we played on the PAX West floor, I think the highest level character you could play was a sorceress at level 22 in Act 2. Okay. And there's 6 acts for the campaign for PoE 2, and the end game starts after Act 6. Okay. So just to put it in perspective, there's 4 more acts, and the end game doesn't start until the end of Act 6. Okay. So what is the end game like? I don't think anyone can reasonably say, like, even guess at this point what the end game is gonna be like, because the game is so different. Okay. And the main difference that I feel at this point is kind of the pacing, right? Okay. How so? So the pacing in PoE 1 is more or less, you as you're doing the campaign, you walk across the screen, or you start off walking across the screen, you kill a few packs of mobs, you get more gear, get more loot. By the time you're about level 10 to 15, you have enough tools to start just blowing packs up and moving across the screen really quickly. By the time you're about level 30 is kind of another inflection point for a lot of builds. You're shield charging across the entire screen and just blowing enemies up. Okay. You're not quite blowing up the whole screen. You're not really doing that until end game, really, when your build starts coming online. But you're reasonably blowing up enemies pretty quickly. And this, it's more, some of the enemies are really tough, and you have to kite them around, and you have to use the environment to your advantage, and you have to like break their armor. Okay. You have to swap abilities to take advantage of how certain enemies are weak to certain damage types. Like, for example, when I was playing Sork, right? Like, you would hover over an enemy, and there's a little icon for fire. And if it was red, that means they're weak to the fire. Right. And if it was like this gray iron color, that means that they're resistant to it. Yeah. Right? And there's ways to break the resistance with other skills and things like that. Okay. But more than likely, you probably just want to swap to like a cold skill and hit them with that instead to be more successful against those enemies. Or there's even like some skills that you attack with will attack in like a straight line, or they'll attack in like a circle, and different and different mobs have different AI to them, right? Where some enemies they'll all group up as sort of like a mob, and then others will have I call it like an AI leader. Okay. And the AI leader will be bigger and more tanky, and they'll pack swarm you in a different way. Okay. Right? That's kind of what I observed. So, in other words, the pacing of this game is very much dependent on like how you approach different packs of mobs and what tools you want to use to kill those packs of mobs. Okay, so I have a question. And this may seem like kind of an odd question, but is the power fantasy of this game blowing up entire groups of enemies and then being challenged by a boss? Or is the power fantasy feeling like you're constantly at the edge of your seat, you're constantly having to like dance between your evasions, your skills, and having to really express your skill in that way? It was a mixed bag. So, yes, thank you. Alchemist, do you wanna sit forward just a little bit? Yeah, I'm gonna scoot up a little bit. I'm gonna pause the music as well, because thank you, Ten. So yeah, in terms of is it like you're on the edge of survival the entire time, or are you just like blasting through the game? I had actually 2 different experiences entirely. Okay. So I played level 15 to about 20 through a late Act 1 area as mercenary. And the late Act 1 area as mercenary, I actually fought like 3 different bosses. I was going relatively fast.
Okay.
But I wasn't really blasting. How I was doing it was there'd be a pack of mobs. And by the way, in this game you have WASD movement, and you can move and shoot at the same time.
Yes.
You cannot do that in PoE 1 at all. So
okay,
I would see a pack of mobs.
All right.
And I would start shooting them, and I'm WASD moving towards them. And then I kind of navigate around them, and I'm still damaging them as I'm training them backwards. As I'm training them while I'm walking backwards but going forwards through the map, right, to save time.
Right.
As I'm doing that, other mobs are coming at me through the other side, and then I navigate around them, and now they're grouped together.
So now you have a bigger pack that you're training.
Now I have a bigger pack, and then slowly the original pack dies off, and then I just keep doing that until I feel like I'm kind of overwhelmed, and then I stop, kill mobs for a little bit, and then keep going.
Okay, so the experience I had when playing through was kind of similar to that, because the boss fight that I was playing right at the end of the demo is it's in I think it's the Mud Burrow, and you're fighting basically a monster who just kind of just like pops up through holes through the area, and it kept summoning the leeches. And what I found was every other fight I'd had at that point, I had done that. I'd kind of just circle strafed around until I got everyone to kind of follow along, and then I would drop the lightning anchor and then just bounce between all of them.
Yeah.
But that fight kind of cuts that off, because the tail or the body of the creature you're fighting kind of starts to slowly shrink that arena a little bit more. So I wonder if they noticed that was a thing that people did a lot in PoE 1, and they tried to create encounters to confront those types of things. Because I imagine if that's a thing that's so common that people are going to do it, you place some boss fights. Like one of the things I saw in the video that we're watching is it starts off in a big circle, but the boss breaks off part of it. So now you have a much smaller area to kind of dance through. So I'm wondering if that's going to be one of their kind of design philosophies moving forward.
It's definitely, so the boss fights in PoE 2 are definitely more reminiscent of the newer boss fights in PoE 1, like the end game boss fights. So definitely most of the bosses in PoE 1 are very much kind of like, I would call them like tank and spank style bosses, where you just go up to their face and you start hitting them until they die. Okay. But some of the like end game bosses, like Searing Exarch, for example, they have like all these crazy like rolling balls of molten death that you got to dodge and all this kind of stuff. That's like every boss in this game, and it's very, very good. I mean, it's very obvious, and they're putting a lot of marketing effort into the bosses. Like you can see this one, like there's a lot of mechanics that you'll want to dodge as far as bosses are concerned. So that was my first experience with Mercenary, in that I was kind of try-harding the whole time to move forward. And there was this idea that I was like, okay, I'm pulling the mobs, I'm trying not to get hit, I'm trying not to get overwhelmed. Then I played Sorceress.
Okay.
And Sorceress, I was kind of doing the same thing the entire time until I got a buff gem. So I got an uncut buff gem, and I want to talk about uncut buff gems because I've not seen anyone talk about the 3 different kinds of uncut gems. I've just seen people talk about the skill gems. So I spent like 20 minutes studying the buff gems just so we could talk about those in detail. But then I picked Raging Fire Spirit. I'm trying to remember what the name of the skill was. Hold on, I actually took a couple screenshots here. It's called Raging Spirits.
Okay.
I picked Raging Spirits for my buff skill, and basically what this does is when I cast a fire skill, it would summon these flaming skulls. Right.
Okay.
And the flame and it would do that every time I cast a fire skill.
Fire skill.
The flaming skulls would do a lot of damage to enemies, but they'd be very short-lived. But once I had that skill, it's basically up all the time. I was just mowing enemies down. It was insane. I just started demolishing all of the maps and just running.
You get a flaming skull, and you get a flaming skull, and you get a flaming skull. Everyone gets a flaming skull.
So Sorceress has this ability where you have like bouncing fireballs, and so you launch 3 bouncing fireballs. So I was trying to kill enemies with that.
Okay.
And they were taking, a little bit of damage, and I would cast it 4, 5, 6 times, and then they die. But as soon as I got Raging Spirits, I would cast it twice, and then the Raging Spirits would kill everything, and I'd go on an next pack. And I would just running through the map, just like head first. So I think there will be certain builds that once people figure them out and that sort of thing. And yes, this was a Spirit Reserve skill, and we'll talk about Spirit Reserving here in a bit. But once I got that, I was able to just mow everything. It was actually wild. It was the biggest power increase I got across any of the characters, outdoing any other piece of gear that I was able to pick up across all of my playtime on any of the demos.
So there is something I wanted to kind of talking about pieces of gear, because this is a thing that we had another person that is a PoE 1 player who the two of you were talking about the differences between PoE 1 and PoE 2, and he mentioned oh, the econ is weird. It's a barter system. You don't really have gold, but apparently in this new game there actually is gold. So
there's gold.
From playing PoE 1 to PoE 2 as a person who's new to it, explain to me how the like econ and like equipment system has changed between those two games.
So it's hard to say overall how the economy has changed, because again, we just saw very early stuff. Yes. But so the newest league for PoE 1 has introduced gold, right? But gold in that sense is a currency so that you can make the settlers of Kalgor, Kingsport mechanic do something, right? Okay. In this game, you pick up gold, and instead of doing the whole like barter system to barter for items at vendors, you spend gold to get sort of the basic equipment, right? So if you want a chest piece, you can use gold to get that. And I kind of like that because it gives you this linear progression of being able to at least have the basic pieces of gear on your character without like too much crazy work. Okay. Now, what we didn't see anything about like, okay, is there like a mechanic where you can go up to, say, Kirak and trade like stuff for like maps, and does that use gold or what? Because it's hard to say. So maybe you do use currency later on, but we just don't know.
Okay.
Now I was able to get a few currency drops as well. So there were some currency drops
outside of gold. You mean like
outside
other
of
currencies?
Yes.
Okay.
So currency, just so you know, Alchemist. So currency in this game, in PoE 1 and in PoE 2, is things that let you do crafting on your items.
Okay.
So like for example, there's something called an orb of alteration.
Okay.
And an orb of alteration lets you take a normal item and turn it into a 1 affix magic item. Right? Okay. So like let's say your gloves are normal.
Right.
And you're like, hey, I want to add an affix to this. Well, then you can alteration them to give them an affix.
Okay.
And then assuming you have a bunch of alterations, you can potentially like keep re-rolling them until you get the one that you want. Yeah, that more or less, that's kind of the idea. It's more complex than that, but that's more or less the idea. The first thing that I noticed about some of the currencies is they have all new icons and designs. And so this, I don't know how notable this is, but the orb of alteration, instead of being this like kind of silvery blue orb, it now kind of looks like an orb of chaos, except it's blue. So an orb of chaos is like in PoE1 is kind of like the base currency. When people trade, they actually say like, oh, well, this is worth like 20 C or 20 chaos or whatever, right?
Okay.
And it has this like face on it. This like, it looks like a statue face or something.
Okay.
And so in this game, the alteration orb has that face on it and it's blue. And I was like, oh, actually, the design of this icon makes a lot more sense because it's blue. Blue means magic. And it has a face just like an orb of chaos, which means that it's going to like modify an item in some way. So it felt like, I know this is such a small detail, right? But it felt like the icon design for this currency, which you look at currencies quite a lot in PoE1
Gotcha.
in kind of a weird way, because like you get there's certain currencies, right? Like divine orbs. When you find a divine orb, you get really excited because they're super rare, right?
Okay.
And they're worth a lot, right? So yeah, when I saw that new icon design, I was like, oh, they changed all the icons. Oh, this is really cool because we're gonna spend thousands of hours looking at all these icons. And if the icon design kind of like matches what they act, the function of them a lot closer,
it's a lot easier to
it's so much easier to understand. Yeah, it's so good.
So I have another. So my questions are gonna be bouncing around because I'm not only coming to this franchise new, but I haven't played an ARPG in a while. So a lot of my questions are gonna come from those two perspectives. But one of the things that I wanted to ask about when it comes to this game is when it comes to setting up your skills and setting up like let's call, instead of saying skills, because your skills are your abilities most times, and I'm going to use the wrong terminology for it, but like your attributes as you're increasing those, like when you're increasing your evasion or things like that. How hard does PoE1 currently make it to to recalibrate a build? Because what I often do in games like this, especially on my first playthrough, is instead of specifically trying to tailor my build around specific items, I see what items I have picked up, and if I've picked up a couple of good items, I normally, and I'm like this in most games, if I pick up something that's really strong and kind of like in gloves or in some other slot, I will set it to the side.
Yeah.
And just collect a couple of those over my playthrough. And if I start to see synergies between a couple of pieces, I then will go, okay, I have 3 pieces that have this kind of synergy to start off with. I'm going to now change my build to work with these 3 synergies as opposed to trying to shoehorn the build that I've been playing through the game with. How hard is that to change in PoE1?
Let me first correct myself. My brain said one thing and my mouth said another. So I said orb of augmentation. I meant to say orb of transmutation. Okay. So like, by the way, I pulled up the currency list. Here's the list of basic currencies in PoE1. Okay. Like here. Oh, we're going. We're going. Like you get the point, right?
Yeah, that's
so you can see why my brain got confused there for a second.
I think that's fair.
What was your question again?
So my question is, how easy is it to, basically my question in a long-winded way was, how easy is it to respec? Because when I play games like this, my favorite thing to do is take the items that the game is giving me,
yes,
and use those to make a build, as opposed to trying to shoehorn my build into, like, shoehorn a random item into a build that I have going.
So this is going to be your aha moment for PoE1.
Okay.
So the way you craft your gear is you get currency. The way you respec is you get an orb of regret and you get currency.
Okay.
So do you want to know how like in the end game you get these things called maps?
Okay.
You can change the maps to do different things. Do you want to know how you change the maps to do different things?
How?
You get currency. So everything is currency in this game,
At least
more
I
or
don't
less.
have to get currency to get currency, so that's
Actually, there's these things called divination cards, right? And they make stacks. So if you have like 5 or 8, depending on what kind of card you have, you can trade them into a vendor, and then that vendor will give you a reward for those divination cards. Well, there's a mechanic you can use to try to it's called Gamba, where you can try to double or half or get zero of certain divination cards. So you can use currency to get currency. And then there's people who will just like play the market and not even play the video game per se, to just get currency by buying and selling things like, they're Warren Buffett, so.
Okay.
So yes, you can.
So I, full disclosure, was planning on, when I got home after this stream, going to check out PoE 1, because I knew you said PoE 2 is coming in November, right?
Early access is November.
Early access is November.
Yes.
So I was going to go and get PoE 1 so I could kind of play a little bit. I don't know if I have time to play PoE 1 to get some familiarity with it before PoE 2, because it feels like I wouldn't have even gotten to the point where I'm fully playing the game in time.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. As at least me personally, I'm not even recommending that people who want to play PoE 2, I'm not really recommending that they go and play PoE 1 at this point to get ready for PoE 2 because of exactly this, right? Like, it does take a lot of investment. Now, if you have time between now and November, in the case of like, you don't really want to play a ton of other video games and you kind of just want to sit down and invest a couple of 100 hours into PoE 1, then yeah, you probably will have enough time to really learn the video game, follow some build guides, like get reasonably deep into your character. You might get to like yellow maps or something like that at least.
Okay.
But in the sense of like getting to super end game and like really like getting it, like no, I agree with you there. I'm not sure you're gonna have a ton of time, especially if like it's not your full-time job to like play PoE 1. You know what I'm saying?
I like 10K's suggestion. If I want to prepare for PoE 2, I just need to play Elden Ring again. I'm fine with that suggestion. There is a red-headed blender in Elden Ring that I have beef with, and I have 4 characters that are 4 different types of builds in that game.
Yeah.
And they are all heading to the base of the Halig tree to interact and talk to and check the resident of the base of the Halig tree's extended car warranty of that blender. I am fairly certain, 10K, you know the name of that red-headed blender because everyone knows the name of that red-headed blender. And when she beats you, she tells you her name. And I died to her enough that I'm fairly certain her name is tattooed on my eardrums. I'm just saying.
I haven't played Elden Ring yet, so we'll get there. I've been told multiple times I need to get to it. So
I will make you a deal. If I start playing PoE 2 with you, will you go through Elden Ring?
Oh yeah, I already plan to do Elden Ring between now and November. I think there'll be time, especially late September.
Okay.
I think there'll be time. I do want to go into the skills and the skill gems just a little bit, and
okay.
I'm gonna pause it over here on this section. So the skill gems in this game work a little bit differently than PoE 1 and really just any ARPG. So here we go. First of all, PoE 1, you're just getting into your equipment. And
okay.
So all your equipment has sockets. They're of different colors, and there's a problem with this.
Yeah, it's if you don't have the socket that matches the skills you're using, you end up with gems that don't fit that. You end up with wasted gems you can't do anything with. And then if a piece of gear drops later on that has the sockets of the gems you weren't using, now you've gone, well, I've wasted all this time getting to here. I could have just used this. Is that kind of accurate as to what it could be?
You nailed it, right? Okay. If you find an exciting piece of gear in PoE 1, a lot of the time the reaction that you have is, wow, this is amazing. I'll use this in 100 hours once I can craft it to be exactly what I need it to be.
Okay.
Because, and most of the time, except at the extreme end game. Most of the time, especially while you're leveling, that is because the sockets don't match what you actually need.
Yes.
So you're like, you got all the affixes that you wanted. You got the right armor. You got the right or evasion or shield, energy shield type. You got all the right things except the socket, and because of that, it's absolute trash and you can't use it. That sucks, right?
Yeah.
So they recognize that, and one of the biggest changes from PoE 1 to PoE 2 is that now skills are just a thing you have.
Right.
That is in a totally different sheet over here.
Right.
And you cut gems to go in there. Now, there's actually 3 different kinds, at least from the demo, 3 different kinds of gems that I was able to find.
Okay.
There could be more, but I was able to at least find 3. So the first one and most important one is the skill gem.
Yes.
Okay.
I ran into quite a few of those. Well, quite a few. I ran into 3.
You get the uncut skill gem, and an uncut skill gem can become a skill.
Okay.
Now, the uncut skill gem has a level to it. So in PoE 1, you level up your gems through XP. In PoE 2, there's no more gem XP anymore. Instead, what you do is you get an uncut skill gem, and the uncut skill gem has a level associated with it.
Okay.
And then you can either make a new skill gem of the type that you choose,
Right.
or you can upgrade an existing skill gem to the level of the uncut skill gem.
So
right?
if I have let's say I have lightning arrow.
Yeah.
And I have that at level 1. If I find a uncut skill gem that is level 2, I could either unlock a level 2 skill, or I could make lightning arrow level 2 with that uncut skill gem.
Yeah, and then here's what that UI looks like, right?
Okay.
So, for example, I have like Earthquake here, right?
Right.
Let's look at Armor Breaker.
Okay.
So like Armor Breaker here, you can see what they're actually in the process of doing is they have Armor Breaker right now level 10, and if they click on this, it'll upgrade to level 11 because the uncut skill gem that they are using right now
is a
level 11 uncut skill gem.
Right.
And so you'll see all of these. If they pick one of these, they'll get a brand new skill gem of like Rolling Slam, for example.
Right.
That's level 11. So this is really cool because if you already have an Armor Breaker and you just want to level it up, then you can go ahead and do that. Now then, you'll also notice some of these are grayed out.
Yes.
So there are requirements for learning skills.
Okay.
And the requirements, I don't think anybody has really talked about this yet. So the requirements are level-based, and they're also attribute-based. So for example, let's say Seismic Cry down here.
Right.
It might have a level requirement of like character level 45. But then it also might have a strength requirement to it. Like let's say its strength requirement is like I don't know. Let's see. I took a picture. 43, right?
Okay. So you also have to have the level, and now, okay, on that note,
I'll show the chat here because I took a screenshot. This is going to be the most
okay.
most flub thing ever. So you can see here, oh, it's even backwards. So here's Herald. here's the error you get for Herald of Ash, right? It requires 43 strength, and you cannot cut the gem unless you have the 43 strength, right? So yeah, I by the way, I asked for permission to take a couple of photos.
I would assume so.
Yeah, I'm not sneaking photos from the devs. They were like, it's okay, you can take a couple of photos.
If you were sneaking photos from the devs and then showing them the stream, you're the worst criminal ever. Because you are not trying to actually get away with it. But that does bring me to a question. We were talking about the skills. So you said you have to have the level requirement, and then you might have to have other stat requirements.
To cut the gem.
Yeah, just to cut it.
Not to equip it. Yeah, not to equip it, to cut it. Yeah.
So if you have a piece of armor, right? Let's say you have gloves that give you +2 strength. First of all, is that a thing is that how those attributes kind of work in PoE?
So you would have. There are affixes that can give you attributes. Yes.
Okay. So if you have affixes that give you, will it be beneficial to have a set of armor that just gives you pluses in those things so that you can cut those early?
I thought about this too. Like, as soon as I saw that there was let's say a 42 strength requirement to cut, say like Seismic Cry or something.
Right.
Then I was like, well, what if someone really wants to cut the gem but doesn't have the attributes on their character right now to cut the gem, but they just want it for like another character or something, or they, want to throw it in their stash for later or something like that. I guess you could do that. I think for the most part, though, as you level up, you end up getting all attributes.
Okay.
And you end up picking up attributes from the giant, massive Final Fantasy X sphere grid skill tree.
That is a
right?
good analogy.
So you end up picking up enough where that's not too much of a problem.
Okay.
I don't think. But certainly when you're like level 15 in a demo, it's kind of a problem.
Okay.
Right.
So the reason I ask is because a lot of these skills and a lot of the ways I'm seeing this, there's another game that I've played that has some similarities to it, and I'm liking the fact that some of the things that PoE 2 is doing actually fixes some of the issues. So one of the games I really enjoyed playing was The Division 2, and The Division 2 had pieces of gear. You had your weapon, your primary, secondary, handgun, and then you had your gear pieces, and each gear set had a primary attribute. And then it would have like one primary attribute and then like two secondary attributes. But in addition to that, each gear set had a brand, right? So the brand might be like Heliguard, or it might be like Fortress Industries. I don't remember all of them. And if you had 3 pieces of that gear on, it would give you an advantage, like
like a set bonus.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you would have pieces of gear that had great stats on them, but the brand that they came from gave you a bonus to shotguns, and you're not using those at all. So it sounds like the PoE 1 system was very similar. You can go, these are great gloves, these stats are great, all of these sockets are garbage, this is trash.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of those. There are a lot of those moments. Now, it's not exactly like that, because like everything else in PoE 1, you can get currency to re-roll those sockets. So there's something called a Jewel Crafter's Orb that lets you re-roll the number of sockets. Okay. And then there's something called a Fuse, an Orb of Fusing, that lets you link the sockets. And then there's something called a Chromatic that lets you change the colors of the sockets. But it can be very expensive if you're trying to roll something with, say, like 6 sockets, or you're trying to roll something that is... so certain pieces of gear have an affinity for certain attribute types, and therefore also have an affinity for certain socket colors. So like if you're trying to get an off affinity color, then it can be really hard to get that, and it can be very expensive, right?
So the skill system in PoE 2 kind of minimizes.
The skill system gets rid of that entirely. There's no more colors, and you can see here that so you have your skill, your main skill, right? And then you have support gems. Okay. So the support gems will change the main skill. So I probably the most visceral example that I had from the demo was the mercenary can get a grenade launcher. Okay. And then there's a skill gem that adds multiple shots to whatever you add it to. Right, so you could, for example, get lightning arrow and then add the multiple shots to that, and then now you have a 3-shot lightning arrow every time you use it. Gotcha. Or you can add it to the grenade launcher, which does a lot more damage, and now you have a 3-shot grenade launcher. Right, it's same support gem, but it can be slotted in to both different skills. Right.
Okay, this is a quick, like, I'm breaking kayfabe here for a moment.
Yeah.
As a soldier, the idea of taking the firing mode from one weapon and being able to add it to another weapon is both delightful and terrifying. Yeah. Because could you imagine if that was a thing could you imagine taking the fire rate of, say, like the A10 Warthog and adding that to a belt-fed grenade. Like that's
PoE, yeah.
That's okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. When did you say this is going into early access?
No-
I need to make sure
November
I take
15th.
that weekend off.
So one thing you'll also notice here, so this is very different for PoE, right? Like I explained before, there's this vendor called Lily Roth. She has 300 gems in PoE 1, and as soon as you meet her in Act 6, you're just like, wow, this is a lot. In this game, they really pare it down, and they give you this like guided experience where they say, hey, instead of 300, here's like 20 options.
Okay.
Right? However, you'll notice there's a tab on the left here.
Yeah, that has significantly more.
It says mace, axe, crossbow, sword, spear, bow, quarterstaff, blah, 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 and then all gems. If you click on the all gems, you can pick whatever you want. Any class can use anything from any other class. And so you can actually do really potentially super OP things.
No, not potentially.
Yeah.
There are things that are going to be busted. If you can
I mean,
choose
this
from,
is just letting you know, this is normal for PoE 1 players. This is just another Tuesday for
how
them.
can I make my nukes have the fire rate of an SMG?
So
Questions that need to be asked.
I'll give you an example, right? Because I think this is what PoE 1 players are scared of, is they're scared that this sort of guided experience is, instead of being an on-ramp to the complexity that they're used to, being able to do anything, that it is a limitation.
Yes.
Right? So what this is just a nice UI for people who are new to Path of Exile. That's what actually this is, because if you are if you're a mercenary and you're using crossbow for the most part to start off with, and you want to go to a cult and grab Detonate Dead, and you want to cast Detonate Dead, you can cast Detonate Dead, right? You can do that if you really want to, right? Okay. So the options there are not limited, except for, again, by your character level and by the attribute that you can cut the gem with.
Okay. How much of these types of changes do you think were made solely to bring in new players? Like completely new to the ecosystem, like not even just players from Diablo to PoE, but like completely new to this game style ecosystem as a whole?
I feel like most of them. Okay. Because PoE already has many super hardcore players and fans, and that sort of thing. In fact, the recent league was their biggest league launch of all time, right? Okay. But I think the kind of player that they need, and by the way, if you are like a Giga Chad PoE 1 player, I think you would want GGG to have success with the casual or semi-casual audience, right? Even though this is a mature game, right? Like, you know, the casual, I put casual in quotes here, you know, the 40 to 200 hour player, you know, that's casual for this game. Okay. But the casual audience for this game, you'll want them to find success with this game, because then that will make GGG more successful. They'll let them invest more money into the game. And so on and so forth, right?
It's kind of funny you mentioned about fighting games, because that's what drives fighting games. Like, yes, tournaments are great, tournaments are wonderful, but most fighting games see the most sales immediately after launch. Perfect example of that is like MK1, right? Came out earlier this year. A bunch of casual players bought it, and a bunch of casual players played it, and it was spectacular, it was wonderful. And then about 2 or 3 weeks in, they drop off. They're playing with their friends at home, they're playing with a couple people. It's the people that are going to go and travel to tournaments that are going to keep that game's kind of life going. And so it's interesting to see that with this game, they're trying to take that same approach to bring people in. I'm definitely going to want to try this game. I'm tempted. I keep wanting to be tempted to try PoE 1 just so I can see what that's like. But I'm very, very curious.
Okay,
if PoE 1 is Street Fighter Third Strike, then PoE 2 is Super Smash Bros. Melee. I'm sorry if this analogy is bad. I feel like from what I'm seeing, He said, I think PoE 2 is not made as a sequel for people who enjoy PoE 1. I think PoE 2 is a game for a broader. So I think a better analogy of that would be if PoE 1 is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, PoE 2 is Capcom versus X-Men versus Street Fighter. Like, I want to bring in a bigger audience of people. Yeah. I'm going to make things a little bit wilder and a little bit crazier, but the fundamentals are still there. And you can still have those things of, I liked this in this game, so I'm going to be able to translate that over to the next game. But for those of you who know those fighting games, you know, if you really liked Ryu in Super Street Fighter 2 and then you picked him up in X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Ryu sucked because there were so many other cool characters. And my concern from what I'm seeing is that I'm going to learn the most from players who played PoE 1 and have put forth the effort to go, I've tested this, I haven't tested this. I've tested this, I haven't tested this. I know this is good, not from a this is meta defining, but just this has more effectiveness than that type of thing. And I hope that those players are still playing in PoE 2 because I feel like that community will be really, really important. I only know of 3 fighting game series: Street Fighter, Super Smash Bros., and Soul Calibur. So I had to guess. No worries. I have played... How many? I have probably played 30 different fighting game... like fighting game franchises. So I'm saying like Street Fighter is 1. Mortal Kombat is 2. Like, not counting all of the iterations of those. So I definitely get that. Yeah, Virtua Fighter, there's Tekken, there's 2XKO, there's... I could, if you held a crossbow to my head, I could probably come up with half of them off the top of my head.
The Mercenary will definitely hold a crossbow to your head.
It seems like you will.
So let's talk about support gems.
Okay.
Because we just talked at length about skill gems, how you can cut them, all the mechanics.
Yes.
So all those same mechanics apply to support gems, but again, we're talking about sort of guided experience for new players, right? And I want to show you. I'm going to hide our camera here for a second.
Okay.
I want to show you this little checkbox at the bottom. You see this show recommended gems?
Yes.
Okay. This is the guided experience, right? So you see we have Mace Strike selected, and then we have 9, support gems that the developers think are good for your Mace Strike, right?
Right.
Now, if you really want to, there's this button down here for all gems.
Okay.
And more so for support gems than for skill gems, selecting all gems here is far more impactful because you can put any support gem on any skill.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna put.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
You can put any support gem on any skill.
Yeah.
But support gems. So are support gems more generalized now because of that, or are there just?
They've always been this way in PoE 1. Right.
Okay.
So that's with the recommendation on. Now here's the recommendation off. So you can see there's a scroll bar and it just keeps going, right? So you uncheck that checkbox, the recommended gems.
Okay.
And now here's everything that is possible to slot into Mace Strike. Oh, yes. And I should be very clear here. Not every single, not 100% of support gems fit into 100% of skills.
I have a question.
There's a pick list here. That's what this show recommended gems here. That's what I was trying to illustrate for you here.
Right.
Is that yes, you can put almost everything into here. Yes.
Okay, but I have a question though. So Mace Strike, I'm going to assume, has no elements, right? It's a Mace Strike. But if you click added cold damage, could you then add support gems that enhance cold spells or cold abilities to it to make those effects stronger?
It depends. So there's different kinds of triggers and activations.
Okay.
Right? So a mace strike would not count as a cast of a thing.
So
it would count as an attack
strike
of a thing. It's called an attack in this game. And then, there's certain things that, for example, would do a hit, and there are certain things that would be like a spell. And so the good news is if you don't know any of that stuff, this game also does something that PoE 1 doesn't do, in that you can hold Alt on your keyboard, or I believe it's like L3 on like the PS5 controller or whatever,
so the
or R3 or whatever, the stick push in.
Yes.
And then you can hover over any of the keywords on any of the tooltips, and you can either click on them or you can hover over them, and it will tell you what that means.
Okay.
And like pretty much every keyword is always underlined, and they go into quite a lot of detail. So you don't necessarily have to bring up the wiki every single time you want to be like, will this work in this slot with this purpose and that sort of thing. You can kind of get an idea of like what's going on just by playing the game and kind of staring at the tooltip for long enough. Now, all that said, tooltips do lie about things in ARPGs. This is like a valuable lesson to someone who's like a little bit more advanced and wants to, make a really, really tight build or something like that. Is like you cannot trust the tooltip to tell you all of the information. But at least for the context of the topic that we're talking about here, someone who's new to the game, who's just trying to learn, like, when I do a mace strike, does inspiration happen? What triggers the inspiration? Yeah, that is something that can happen, and then this is the trigger, and this is what that trigger means. You can get that through sort of the tooltip analysis.
Okay, so now the build crafting part of my brain is going, right? So I'm imagining that they let you show all gems so that you can kind of play around with different possibilities. And I would assume that if it doesn't work, it will just either straight up tell you that it doesn't work, or it just like it'll have no effect, right?
Yeah, it just won't work. I typically they don't give you like error messages very often about things. Although there is a new error message now that you've brought this up. There's a new sort of like thing that happens when you're out of mana, right? So like in every Diablo game or ARPG, the character will always be like,
I'm out of mana.
I'm out of mana. Not here. Not in town. Or like whatever. In this, instead of doing that, instead of giving you the like kind of character lore specific, I'm out of mana or whatever, there'll be like a little blue bump.
That goes over their head.
Like a little blue halo that will just like fire off over your head when you try to use a skill and you don't have the mana for it. And it'll make like a little sound effect, like a bump, right? And it's not an annoying sound, to be clear.
Well, no, I did it a couple times with my ranger.
It's just telling you, it's just giving you a nice indication right on your character that the character cannot that you're attempting to.
You did last, you can't do right now.
And just to show this, right, like your character is here in the middle of the screen, and your mana orb is way down here. So for most brand new players, having that indication right here, because you're looking at your character most of the time so you don't get hit, having that indication like proximate to the center of the screen right here is very, very useful, because you're not like moving your eyes back and forth like this all the time, because you also have your health orb over here, right? You're not like going like your eyes. If you follow my mouse here, I don't know if the stream can see my mouse, but if you go boop 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 boop, like you're not doing that all the time with your eyes, right?
And if you have to choose a thing to check, like as a new player, the one thing that I checked most often, once I realized that I would get the notification from my mana, the only thing that I would take my eyes off the screen long enough to check would be my health, just because I could tell that I got hit, and I could immediately glance down and go, how bad was that hit? Oh, okay, no, that one hurt. Or okay, that one's fine. I can kind of keep going. So I think I do like the fact that they've added that in. But now that I'm watching footage from the safety of not having to control the character on screen, I do see that there are quite a few icons that will show up in the upper left.
Yeah,
I wonder.
those are buffs.
Right. I kind of assumed that that's what those were. I wonder.
Or debuffs.
In that instance, it was a debuff.
Yeah.
So since you can apply buffs and debuffs, I'm assuming that those come from skills.
I believe that's a power charge right there, what he just picked up.
Gotcha. But they can come from skills. Does
Yep.
that mean that because you now have access to all of the skill gems from all of the classes, does that mean that you could take so for instance, right, if there is a buff that increases your fire rate with the bow, and there is a buff on another character that increases the duration of a buff, I could go and get that buff that increases the duration of that buff, add it to my rapid fire buff on. I can take the skill from character A, go to the buff from character B, and just add that over.
Yeah, in theory, you can add multiple support gems together, and they will combine together. Yeah, that is a thing, and that's a pretty common. Like stacking really powerful support gems is how you make a really powerful build, basically.
Okay.
At the most basic level, right? Okay. You'll definitely also want to include a whole bunch of other things in that. Like,
yes.
We should talk about. I actually don't know the name for them. Maybe someone in the chat can correct me. I think they're called skill notables. So I don't know how deep of a look you had on the skill tree, but the skill tree is very similar to PoE1 in the sense that there are nodes. Not all nodes on the skill tree are created equal, right? Okay. So some of the nodes on the skill tree will give you like a small buff, like they'll give you, like 10% mana regen, or they'll give you like 10 evasion or something, right? And then there's sort of medium nodes that will give you like 40 evasion or 40 mana regen or whatever, right? And those will be sort of like at the end of the path that you took to get there, right? So they're all like connected. But then there'll be some super special nodes, notable passives. That's what I meant. 10 thank you, 10K. So notable passives, they have this crazy filigree around them.
Okay.
And there's only, is there 4 or 6 of them in PoE2? So I spent like 20 minutes looking at the passive tree, but
okay.
The ones that the ones that have keystones. We're talking about keystones, yes. So the keystones, they have this filigree around them. And the ones that I saw are actually all pretty much familiar to me from PoE1.
Okay.
So there's one that's called Blood Magic. Blood Magic, it essentially deletes your mana. You don't have mana anymore.
And you use health to cast.
And you use health to cast all of your spells.
Right. Okay.
Which might be really nice if you're a melee character that doesn't have a lot of mana and you have a ton of health. And then on top of that, you have a lot of things that reduce the amount of life that like spells cast from and so on, right? So that can be a really good way to basically get like infinite mana more or less.
Okay.
Those are really, really strong. There's another one I saw that was like that's on sort of the mage side of the tree, right? That is, you have 1 health, but you're immune to all chaos damage, right?
That trade-off seems abysmal.
Yes, but you also if you have 1 health,
mm-hmm.
And you're on the mage side of the tree, chances are pretty good that you have a lot of energy shield. So basically, your energy shield is your health.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So it's called chaos inoculation.
Okay.
So all the keystones that I saw on the PoE2 tree essentially are from PoE1.
Okay.
And so that's not to say that the game's feature complete yet. They might change the passive tree more before the early access.
Okay.
But
I mean that would make sense.
But yeah, I think people who have played a lot of PoE1 will be already familiar with the passive tree. And for folks who are still new to PoE. I guess the thing I'd have to say about the passive tree is that even though it does look very intimidating, there is only one passive tree. So the nice benefit of that is like when you learn the passive tree, or as you learn the passive tree, your next character uses the same passive tree, and your next character uses the same passive tree. And so over time, you kind of get very familiar with everything on the passive tree, and even
you immediately start grabbing.
Yeah, you can
immediately. We're going to work for this character.
You can kind of grab all of them. Yeah, mind over matter is there as well, and chaos inoculation and blood magic, and then.
But you can't have multiple of those together. Like you couldn't have blood magic and chaos inoculation.
Oh, you can, yeah.
Okay, so then there are obviously combinations. Like if chaos inoculation gives you 1 HP and blood magic makes you use HP to cast spells, unless it pulls from your shield, then it basically becomes like that's a bad combination to put together. Right?
Yeah. So, it depends on what gear you have and exactly what like your skills are and all that kind of stuff. How it all kind of mixes together is kind of the magic of PoE 2. Now, the classes do, just like PoE 1, the classes do start on different sections of the tree.
Gotcha.
So, if you are a sorceress, for example, you're going to start by taking mana nodes that are oriented towards intelligence. If you're a warrior, you're going to start with strength nodes. If you're marksman, you're going to take dex nodes, that sort of thing. But then where you go from there, you can kind of like work your way over to the other side, and so on, as you so desire. Chances are good that you'll want to stay kind of like within your side of the tree, and you'll kind of want to go from there. But I was getting a lot of questions on Reddit actually about like a lot of the specifics of the passives.
Okay.
And as I was looking at them, I was like, well, I think based on the content that I'm seeing in the demo here, it's maybe a little too early to sit down and be like, well, let me theory craft my end game build right now.
Gotcha.
Because I bet you this is all going to change in a month, right? That's kind of how it felt to me. So I'm trying to get more vibes here than like super specific things, because if you try to get all the super specific things right now, you're going to end up being like, well, why did they change that?
I get that.
Yeah.
I am very much looking forward to this now, though. I feel like this game is going to take the same. My only concern about it now is that it's going to take the same kind of space in my gameplay loop or my gameplay like stack that a game that I've currently been playing a lot is sitting in. So it'll be a good thing to try this out, but there are it'll be interesting because there are a couple of other games that are taking up that same kind of space. So I'm gonna have to try this one out and really see how I enjoy it, to see if it's gonna dethrone that other game that takes my build crafting, crazy inventory, RPG, time sink space in my games.
Okay, we need to talk about buff gems though.
Okay.
So we haven't talked about buff gems.
Okay.
And holy crap. So I got, on the last demo, the one that I got today, I got a buff gem, which I believe were previously called meta gems. So these are gems that, this is kind of a new system.
Okay.
These are gems that PoE 1 people will be familiar with, but they work in a different way. So essentially you have a new mechanic on your character, and you can kind of see it above the mana bar here, on going like horizontally across the mana bar.
Right.
That's called your spirit. And your spirit is a reservation system. So you only have so much spirit. And when you equip a buff gem, it takes up a certain amount of that spirit.
Okay.
Right. And then once you spend all that spirit, you can't have like more buff gems.
Right.
Right. Now, buff gems are not something that you necessarily need to cast all the time. And in fact, you might not need to cast them at all. but more or less are like permanent things that you can throw on the battlefield or permanent things that just happen based on other events that happen on your character.
Okay.
So some of these are wild. Some of these are crazy. So the first one, like I mentioned earlier, there was Raging Spirits that I had on Sork. So this is just one of those permanent ones that you cast. Anytime you cast a fire spell, these flaming skulls come out and just start murdering everything.
Okay.
They're extremely powerful for while I was leveling. They were doing a ton of damage.
Okay.
It was night and day when I turned this thing on. When I turned Raging Spirits on, I went from like kiting enemies around and like killing them in like 4 or 5 waves of different attacks to just running into every single pack of mobs and just blowing them all up.
Okay.
But what I started noticing about all of the buff gems is the buff gems, most of them work with their own sort of like resource system, which is really cool. So like, for example, there's one called Barrier Invocation.
Okay.
Right? And Barrier Invocation reads, casting this spell once activates it, causing it to gain energy when your energy shield is damaged by hits. Casting it again once sufficient energy is gathered will consume the energy and triggers socketed spells. So in other words, yeah, it's this is a complicated one. So you have the buff gem, right?
Right.
The buff gem can socket other spells.
Okay.
Like other skill gems.
Okay, so the buff gem.
Barrier Invocation can socket other skill gems, right? The ones that you have socketed get cast. They
when
get
the
triggered
gets broken.
when you decide to invocate the barrier yourself. You have to do it manually. This is a manual cast thing.
But it gathers energy as your barrier is damaged, correct?
Yes, you got and up to 500 maximum energy.
Okay.
So most of them have this kind of like mechanic that I was seeing, right? So like, for example, there's one called Poison Nova. And anytime you do poison damage, Poison Nova will gain poison damage and like store it.
Okay.
And then when you cast Poison Nova, it will release all the poison damage that it stored into that buff gem.
Okay.
So
interesting. All right.
And there's a bunch of them. Actually, my favorite one, I think. Did I take a screenshot of that? Okay, I didn't take a screenshot of this one. But my favorite one was Cast on Shock. That one looked mega bonkers. It was basically anytime you shock an enemy, it would cast a skill for free. And I'm like, shocking enemies is like kind of easy.
Yeah,
to
that
do?
sounds
Yeah.
And these can go on any character. So if you use the marksman who has the lightning field that
Yep.
we've seen in the video,
Yep.
where you're shocking groups of mobs, 2 or 3 or that, okay,
Yeah,
That's
it very quickly.
becomes very silly very fast.
Yeah, it gets pretty bonkers. Hydra can socket other projectile skills, and the Hydra that you summon doesn't just shoot little flame things. It shoots the other skills at the enemies. So you socket other skills that your Hydra can then get from you. But it can only cast that at enemies that are burning, shocked, or frozen, I believe. Okay. Right? So in other words, if you're like a minion build, you could like summon a Hydra that has projectile skills that somehow like inherit from your stats, and then they're casting skills that you can cast, which is wild to me, right? So in other words, these buff gems, they're mega powerful when you get them. They're super duper powerful. They're crazy.
Okay. I assume that also is going to mean that they're going to be hard to find.
Yeah, 10K linked Cast on Shock in the chat if you guys want to check that out. But yeah, I think they're very, very strong, and something to keep an eye on because yeah, that was pretty wild to me. particularly because there's it kind of came as a surprise that, oh, well, this is just another kind of gem too,
Right.
that you can have and slot it in. And from like an APM perspective, like actions per minute perspective, it's not something that really takes up a slot on your skill bar.
Right.
You don't have to skill bar it for it to do the thing, right? As soon as I had Raging Spirits just on, then it was just doing the thing, no skill bar changes required.
Yeah, you just cast the spell that it was connected to, and
Yep.
actually it was in that instance it was whenever you cast any fire spell.
Yeah.
So you just cast a fire spell and get that.
Yeah, and that's pretty different from, say, Diablo 4. Like in Diablo 4, even if you have a thing that like automates a skill, most of the time you have to put that skill on your skill bar, and they use that as sort of like a balancing mechanic to make sure you can't just like cast every single skill of the game or something like that automatically. But in this game, you can cast whatever you want, even if it's not on your skill bar. It's pretty nutty.
Okay. I feel like there's gonna be a
You feel
delightful learning
you
curve.
feel your mind melting already. Yeah.
No, not melting. I'm thinking of all of the things that I'm going to try when it launches. All the different questions that I have that are things that I'm not going to get those questions in my mind until I like can see the game and see the skills. My biggest regret now is not being able to play this more, because then I would have been able to have some of those moments of like, okay, now that I've seen how these two pieces work, I wonder how I can bend this part of the rule set here, or how I can make this part of the rule set feed this one. So I'm actually, the more we talk about it, the more I'm really looking forward to this game. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and to be fair, the demo was already 30 minutes long, which is a very, very long, like when you're on the showroom floor at PAX, that's a very long demo.
Yeah.
And then you play for 30 minutes, and then you look up and you're like, wait, it's over? Where'd the time go? So, yeah. I got to play it at PAX West this year 4 times total.
Okay.
So I played Mercenary at level 1. I played Mercenary level 15. I played Sork level 22. I played Witch level 15. Actually, no, I played Sork level 22 twice. So I played it 5 times.
Okay.
But even with that, I think I could easily sink 100 hours into the demo, which, only really went through a couple of areas in Act 2, just to kind of like get a full like understanding and lay of the land of all of the differences between this game and PoE 1, because there's quite a lot going on with this game.
Okay. Well,
do you want to go to our second topic of the night, which is everything else at PAX West?
we could do that. We can go through the other side, the other topic here. So, one of the games that I enjoyed most my time at PAX West was spent going to a lot of different smaller demo stations.
Yeah, you mentioned you had a top 3.
I do have a top 3. My top 3 at PAX this year, Ender Magnolias is definitely on my top 3, because that game is going to be, if you've ever seen Ender Lilies, it is a Metroidvania style game. It's in the same vein of like
Hollow Knight.
And Ori of the Blind Forest. Ender Lilies is a game in that vein, and it's gorgeous. And Ender Magnolias looks like it is going to be that game, but just improving on all of the things that they did in the original. So that's one of them. There is a fighting game done on team, and it's called
Someone fire. Check, check, check. Check. Check, check,
No.
check, 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 check. Are we good?
It
All right.
seems like we're good now.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Restarting the audio device worked. Yay!
Turning things off and back on again is how it is always the way to go. So, chat, I need you to tell me, which thing did you hear about? You already heard about the Ender Magnolias. So we were talking about Corrupt. So Corrupt is another fighting game. It's a very small team that's working on it. And the thing that is kind of coolest about it is that I got to just scratch the surface of how the combat system in that game worked.
Yeah.
And they have already made patches between Evo, where they had it last, and here, because there were some touch of death infinites that you can get with one particular character that were just brain dead to complete. Like, he has a portal that you can place, and if the enemy falls into it, you kind of like it drops him back to the ground.
Yeah.
If you then double tap down, you teleport to that. So you can air combo them up to the air and then double tap down while in midair to teleport back down to the combo and relaunch them again. And just touch of death. Just pogo them up.
Awesome.
And it's dumb. The other one that I really, though, enjoyed is this horror game called The Occultist.
This was at Seattle Indies.
No, this was at PAX.
Where was this at PAX?
You're asking me for location. It was Datalit Games.
Was this in the indie mega booth area?
It was behind the Indie Mega Booth area, but it's
okay. Yeah.
When you came in and you saw like the PAX, I think it was like the PAX Next, which is where all of the Indie Mega Booths were.
Right.
There was
Yes,
another
yes,
one right
yes.
across from it.
Got
and
it.
you went into the booth to see The Occultist. It's fully voiced. The guy that they got to do the voice for the main character is same person who was the voice of Geralt of Rivia.
Oh, really?
So it's
okay.
a really, really cool game to see that. And it had some really interesting mechanics because there's this little token that he has with him that has a chunk of glass in it. And you would get these vibrations in the controller to let you know that you could see the spirit world. And you'd bring this thing up to your eye and you would see things from the past. And if you stared at them long enough, you would actually sometimes like manifest things into the current.
Yeah.
Very cool looking game.
Okay.
Seems like it's a lot of fun.
What game was this called?
The Occultist.
Cultist. Okay.
That's it. It is going to actually be kind of. There were a couple moments during playing it where I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be fine. They're gonna give me like a weapon at some point, right?" And the person I was playing with that was standing next to me, she goes, "No weapon. You get no weapon." I'm like, "There's gotta be a weapon." She goes,
Seems whenever I turn some other sound device on, it's breaking the sound. So maybe
Gotcha.
I won't do that.
Well, the good thing is though is that we can always just drop the link to the trailer in chat.
That's a good.
And then chat can at their own leisure go and take a look at it.
It's a good call.
So my top 3 are Ender Magnolias, Corrupt, and The Occultist. Those are the ones I'm most looking forward to playing. And then at Seattle Indies, they showed this at Gamescom. They may have done the announcement trailer at Gamescom, but I got to play it at PAX. So I'm not sure if they also had it at Gamescom, because I didn't make it to Gamescom this year because
there were a lot of folks that literally flew straight from Gamescom
Yeah.
over here, which is kind of wild. Those dev teams must be so tired, man.
Yeah, and there's one indie dev team that is working on a kind of a party game. They're going to TGS very soon, and I'm not even sure when TGS is, but I think that's gonna be nuts. I mean, I have TwitchCon in like 2 weeks.
Good thing I'm not going to TwitchCon because I need to clean up my house.
I will be doing I'll be doing a panel at TwitchCon.
That sounds
so
crazy.
I can't skip that one.
That sounds crazy, but we've been like blasting PAX, and so just like our whole house is just like we just started putting things on the floor because we'd get home. Like Sarah's doing her cosplay, getting super busy, and we just come home and we're just like, here's stuff, whatever. Speaking of stuff,
I was wondering if that was the segue you were going to use.
Speaking of
that's a really
stuff.
good segue.
Speaking of stuff, hold on. We're gonna turn the camera just a little bit, and we're also gonna bring the microphone. You just be mindful that we need to be close to the microphone for people to hear us. So,
Or I could just project.
you can, but Sarah might hate you.
He told me earlier to do that. Did you remember when we first started? He was like, "You can yell all you want, and it'll be fine." And I'm like, "But your ears won't."
I'm just playing.
No. I did see that bar go full red though.
We have some stuff to show the stream.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this is swag. Some of this is things we bought. Let's do some unboxing. The cosplay went really good, Micah. We'll have if you guys are in the Discord, we have a cosplay channel in the Discord, !Discord in the chat. We'll have some pictures and video and stuff up there of how Sarah's cosplay went this weekend. Okay, so I think first and foremost, out of all this stuff,
I think that should be the first thing we show off.
I think we should show this off. So we are streaming in the Path of Exile category, so we gotta make sure we gotta open some stuff here. So some people might know what this is if you've been paying really close attention to the subreddit and so on. This right here.
I feel like people have been kind of talking about that in the
But I don't think people have actually really seen it yet.
I have one of those in my car, so I would like to see what it is.
So this is a gaming mat. This is a Path of Exile 2 gaming mat. And
I'll take this side.
it's massive. Look at this. Look at this thing. Perfect for playing Magic the Gathering or for your PC or your mouse pad or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a mouse pad for the mods? I'll have to figure that out. I might have a few extra, so stay tuned for that. Let me roll this back up because this boy is thick.
He a thick boy.
He a thick boy. Okay, so we also went. I got a little patch here.
Okay.
We went to go see the Triforce Quartet. Did I tell you about the Triforce Quartet? Alchemist?
Yes, you did. You actually, not only did you tell me about it, you showed me video.
Yeah. So we got to see them live at PAX.
Right.
And honestly, the Triforce Quartet was I hadn't heard them before.
Okay.
But they were the biggest musical surprise of the whole con for me. They
Really?
are extraordinarily talented and very good. And they kind of killed it. They kind of killed it, man. Their medleys of different video game music is insane. Definitely check them out if you guys haven't checked out Triforce Quartet.
Okay.
If you like classic music and you like stringed instruments and you like video game music and you put those things together, then you'll love their music. They're insane. They're extremely talented. Next, I'm not ready to dig into the bag yet. Next, I haven't even opened these. Is this which one of these is the starter set? Okay. Yes, I think this is the starter set. Okay. So, do you know what Netrunner is?
Yes. Not only do I know what Netrunner is, I used to volunteer for Fantasy Flight Games.
Yes.
Who's the ones who created Netrunner, and played quite a bit of Netrunner.
So the Fantasy Flight is now defunct.
No, they have been absorbed into Asmodee Games.
Unless they lost the license for Netrunner.
So they are defunct. Okay.
And another group picked this up, Null Signal Games, and they started licensing it. And they've been making. Apparently, I've just been living under a rock. They've been making expansions for it for a while. Now they have like 8 different expansions and an all new starter set. So I'd always wanted to get into Netrunner, and I also got like some promo cards here.
Nice.
Like this is like a super secret promo card here.
Gotta get the face up.
Camera, go. There it goes. Here. So we got a whole box here just for the starter set that I might unbox at like a whole different stream, just looking at these cards and like set the camera up and stuff so we can do that. But this is just the starter set. I believe Netrunner is a 2-player asymmetric game,
yes.
Right? Where one person plays like the corporations and one people plays like the hackers or whatever, right? More or less. But then I picked up an expansion set, and the expansion sets come in packs of 2. So as you can see, each of these expansion sets are just as big as this starter set here. So yeah, this is like a ton of Netrunner that we can play, and that's going to be a ton of fun. And this is the new Netrunner as well, so it's expanded upon and so on and so forth.
That's going to be fun.
It looks awesome.
Well, I do have to tell you something. Speaking of net running, I am going to have to net run as well. Because I have to drive home, and I just checked traffic, and it's about an hour and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and head out and let you enjoy show and tell with Chad.
Could you stick around for 5 more minutes?
I can do that.
We can wrap up, I think, in 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. But there's so much cool stuff to show off. Do you really want to make that only 5 minutes?
Sure. So we have just a few more things here.
Okay.
So first things first, let's show this off. This is a gyroscopic dice, and or die. No, it's dice because it's all the dice. So it looks kind of Diablo-ish or Path of Exile-ish, and you can roll the dice by doing this. And then whenever it slows down, then the pip that it lands on, it's kind of hard to see here on the camera, but there's like a pip here that will indicate which number it rolled. And you can kind of put it flat on the table like this, and it will roll, and then everyone can see it like that. And it has these like, it looks like a fidget spinner. It has this ball bearing in it that looks amazing.
I know that I'm happy I didn't see that. I spent enough money. Had I seen that, I would have had to explain myself a lot more than I'm already going to have to explain myself. I got there's an artist named Jed Henry who does ukiyo-e style paintings of pop culture figures. So you ever seen like those old Japanese paintings of like like samurai? So it's that, but it's like Master Chief and like it's like Master Chief from Halo or Pokemon in like very traditional styles. And this year his booth was buy two get one free.
Uh-oh. Did you buy two and get one free?
I did buy two and get one free.
So we have
3 different times.
Oh.
we have some D&D mini mystery boxes to open.
Okay.
So I got the sharp implement over here.
Okay. Watch your finger.
And we're gonna open these. These are, I don't know what these are. These are mystery boxes. So we'll see how these go. Oh, this is like a. Is this like a glow in the dark skull? Death Skull mini yellow. It loves your face, Alchemist.
I don't know why.
There it is. Death Skull, right there.
You've been talking about skulls all day. That box has just been sitting there vibrating with excitement. Like, he likes skulls. He's gonna love me.
That one looks awesome. Okay, let's open the second one here. Oh, this
I can come back.
2 in here. This is a dual pull. There is this guy, some kind of mage guy. He looks pretty cool. And then there's this guy. He's like he almost looks like he's from Zelda. This is like one of the eye creatures.
Actually, he looks like a creature from Final Fantasy. He looks like an Ahriman.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Giant flying eyeball.
Yeah, he could be that guy. And then we got one more mystery box, and then we got 2 non-mystery boxes.
Okay.
And then this is this is like a necromancer. None of these mystery boxes are painted, but they're just raw resin, which makes them cheap and fun. But I think I will have to glue him to the base. But he looks awesome. He's like a red necromancer.
That's pretty dope.
Then we have 2 non-mystery boxes, and then we got to get Alchemist out of here. And both of these are almost the same.
Okay.
First non-mystery box
High detail premium figures.
in like 5 million layers of packing and rubber.
You gotta protect the minis. The minis must be protected, especially when it. Oh, that's cool as shit.
This is a Diablo-esque but not Diablo licensed angel.
Legally distinct angel.
Legally different angel, as you can see here.
So if we're trying to get around this legally distinct angle, it's not. That is not an angel. That is a legally distinct angle.
That is an angle, not an angel.
That is an angle. That's how. That's how you do it. It is an armored angle. It's 9. I'm gonna not make math jokes to me. I'll get booed out of here if I start making bad punny math jokes.
All right, and then the last one to wrap the stream up is another one, but this is actually my favorite. This has a bow and arrow. It looks amazing, man.
So now my question is, are you going to take the necromancer and paint it so that it at least can stand next to the legally distinct angle and the archer angel that is with them?
If I was any good at painting, I would. I might just use them as is. I do like Theater of the Mind quite a bit when playing D&D.
Okay.
So sometimes it's actually useful to have the minis be unpainted or whatever, just to give the players a little bit more to imagine.
I get that.
And then sometimes, every once in a while, I like having a mini, like one of these guys here, where my camera will focus, and there's a little bit less to imagine, but
that's also when
it makes you go, whoa,
yeah, when the unpainted minis
it's serious,
there, and then you see that guy drop, you're like, ooh, we have made a mistake, chat, party, folks. He looks significantly more detailed. I always think of minis from the perspective of Warhammer minis.
Yeah.
And like you paint your army because you want your army to look good. So that's where I'm coming from.
The people who paint Warhammer are insane. And in fact, you go up and you talk to someone and you're like, wow, your army looks amazing. And they're like, I don't know how to paint. And you're like, shut up. Shut up. You're amazing. You're insane. They're like, no, I don't know how to paint.
My painting
you should
bad,
see,
and it looks like the Sistine Chapel on a space marine.
Yeah,
you're like,
they're like, I finished 5th at the Olympics. I can't run. And you're like, shut up. Just shut up. I think we're gonna wrap the stream up with that.
I think this is good
for today.
I need you to know that my wallet is Path of Exile 2 is free-ish to play.
It's free-ish to play. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We'll leave on this note. Okay.
My wallet is mad at you because
So
it knows it's gonna spend money.
So the way PoE 1 kind of works is it's free to play, but once you get to the end game and you're mapping, you kind of have to buy the stash tabs because it's impractical to drop your loot into the 4 basic stash tabs that they give you.
That is the best. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is the best dad joke I've ever seen.
That angle is acute.
That is spectacular. Okay, anyway, yes, you have to get the stash tabs.
Yeah, so more or less you have to get the stash tabs and in PoE 1. And that more or less equates to $40 to $60 if you buy the most important ones, right?
Okay.
Now, the good news is they have promised, we've yet to see this implemented, so we don't know exactly what this means.
Okay.
But they've promised that if you buy stash tabs in PoE 1, that those come over to PoE 2. So if you buy a map stash tab, assumingly there's going to be a map stash tab. If you buy a currency stash tab, assumingly there's going to be a currency stash tab. If you buy essences, assumingly there'll be an essences one, right? So we've yet to see exactly kind of what the translation is, because it's not 1-to-1. It's not exactly the same from PoE 1 to PoE 2. So things might be a little bit different. There might be a currency tab in PoE 2 is definitely not going to have exactly the same currencies that PoE 1 currencies have, right?
Right, that makes sense.
But I assume that if you did want to get into PoE 1 now, and then you wanted to play PoE 2 in November, that the early access would then transfer over your stash tabs, and they would work in tandem.
That's worth giving a shot. Whenever I play a free-to-play game, I always do the same thing, and that is I play it for 20 hours, and then I sit down and go, how much money would I have paid for this game?
Yeah.
And felt comfortable with. And then I'm willing to put that much money into it for freemium or premium upgrades and such.
Yeah.
So if it's about $60 that it would cost to get all of those stash tabs, from the things I've seen today, I am pretty sure I would have paid $60 for this game. So I'm going to be fine with that.
Yeah, I would say your very first 20 hours in PoE 1, you're going to be doing the campaign and maybe very early mapping.
Yeah.
You can probably get away without stash tabs.
Yeah.
I think you'll want to have at least a map and a currency tab when you start early mapping.
Okay.
It makes a big difference.
The
other tabs aren't as necessary until you start really getting deep into mapping and understanding the end game and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Well, I'm very much looking forward to it. Also, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you letting me hang out.
I know you got to hit traffic.
I do. I have enjoyed hanging out. Your setup is bananas. Chat, I appreciate you guys letting me hang out here as well. This has been a lot of fun. Maybe we will join each other for some PoE 2 and you can drag my infantile behind through the game.
Yeah.
So, very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, you guys make sure you go follow Alchemist Joker. You can click his name below the stream and go over to his stream and click follow. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Peace.
Take it easy.
Goodbye.